So happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to English 219 Online. Figured I'd make a quick video lecture here to, first of all, formally introduce myself to the class, but also to explain some of the things that you're doing, reading, and writing this week. So, as you know, I'm Mike Tardif, and I'll be your instructor this semester. And as I've tried to voice through multiple channels, the most important thing to me is that if you run into any troubles at all in the course, that you reach out to me as early as possible, and chances are we will be able to put that fire out relatively quickly. So this week we're just sort of dipping our toe into the professional writing world, and we're reading a little bit, and we're going to write a complaint letter. And so I wanted to sort of set the stage for that a little bit. One of the things that I'm asking that you read this week is about user or reader-centered design, and really this course is built around that concept that as writers in a professional environment, our most important touchstone really is our audience, and we need to pay close attention to who they are, what they need, what they know, what they don't know, what they'll appreciate, what they won't appreciate, and we really want to use that as our guiding light. And so that's sort of what user-centered design is all about. This is going to be a different type of class for many of you. If your background most recently in writing was in an academic context, this is going to be a little bit different. So one of the fundamental differences is that in an academic writing environment, sort of like what you might encounter in college composition, you're generally writing to a word minimum. Okay, so you're trying to make it to 4 or 5 pages in an essay. In this class, we're going to put a premium on economy of words. So we're going to try to economize our message. We want to maximize what we say and minimize the words that it takes to get there. And so that's something that I immediately want you to frame your writing with and to think about as you're writing any of the assignments that we'll do this semester. I will never penalize you for being too concise. Now, there is a possibility that you may omit key information, you may not deliver your message appropriately, effectively, or thoroughly, and that's obviously not good. But if you can say something in very few words, that's sort of what we want to do. So that's one fundamental difference. The other fundamental difference is that it's possible that in college composition you were writing in very similar genres. Well, in this class we're going to write in an array of genres. And by genre I mean a type of writing. And so the first genre of writing that you're going to be confronted with is the complaint letter. And in this letter you're going to voice your dissatisfaction with a product or a service. And I think this is a really nice introductory assignment in this class, and I'll explain why. One, it gets us acclimated to formal business letter style. And so you'll learn about that through your reading. And so we want to be able to format a letter appropriately, and we want to make sure that it looks and acts like a business letter. And so you may be wondering, why on earth are we writing letters anyway? Aren't they kind of antiquated? Isn't email faster? And, to a large degree, I would say letter writing has been supplanted by email writing. But letters are important for a few reasons. Most importantly, they signify a level of importance, okay, and formality. When you get a letter, you know it's something that's relatively important. And so it demonstrates sort of a level of effort and labor that I think makes your message a little bit more serious. And so, we may think of complaints as something that have a level of escalation. It may start with a phone call, you may follow up with an email, and ultimately you may have to write a letter. And letters also are important because they can serve as legal documents. They are secure. They're actually in some ways more secure than an email. And they're also, they provide documentation. So they allow you to prove that you've done what you've said you've done, and they allow you to have sort of a paper trail of what you've done. So in this complaint letter, I'm going to ask that you voice your displeasure about a product or a service in hopes of getting some type of reconciliation, somebody doing something for you, whether that's a free meal or a free oil change or some type of voucher or just an apology. And so I want you to think about this very carefully to sort of frame this as a user-centered or reader-centered designed assignment. I want you in all of our assignments this semester to really put yourself in the position of the person receiving the message, or persons receiving the message, because sometimes in business and professional writing we're trying to satisfy multiple readers at the same time. And so I always want you to think about what their task is, what their goal is, what their state of mind is, what their background is, what their knowledge of the situation is, what they'll need. And if we can inventory those things, we have a pretty good chance of helping them solve their problem. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. So if you put yourself in the position of the business owner or customer service representative or claims specialist that you're communicating with through your complaint letter, their primary goal is to probably retain you as a customer. Now, that being said, there's sort of a cost-benefit analysis that's going on for this person. Of course, they want to make the situation right, but they have to do so within sort of the confines of the bottom line. They can't, obviously bankrupt themselves trying to save one customer. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. So while this person wants to help you, there's probably a delicate balance there. And so let me explain how that manifests itself in your actual writing of the letter. Of course, when we're writing this letter, we want to be professional. And that's important because if we come in too hot, if we come in too strong, if we're too aggressive, if we're threatening, if we seem like we're a lost cause, there's probably very little reason why this person would help us. In other words, there's an axiom in business that customers are very expensive to get, and so you should try to maintain them. And so that's true to an extent. But if it seems like you're probably not going to be retained as a customer no matter what the person does, there's a good chance that they're not going to help you at all. So you need to come in and you need to seem logical and you need to seem sort of prudent and that you're willing to work with this person. So threats and things like that don't generally work very well. And you may think that that's sort of a ridiculous thing to say, but every semester, and I'm sure one of you will do this, will make some type of threat to the company or the business that you're complaining to. So we need to maintain that professional sort of credibility or ethos, that we're somebody who is pretty rational. And while we're doing this from an individual perspective, while we're doing this as from the position of a consumer who had a bad meal or had some type of incident, I want you to remember that this is a scenario that could easily pop up in your professional life as well. You may work with a vendor or a subcontractor with whom you're not very satisfied with, and you may have to voice that displeasure. So it's important to remember that while we're doing this from the position of a consumer, this is a scenario that you very easily and likely will run into in your professional life. The other thing that I want you to think of is that this person wants to help you. Okay, they want to send you a replacement product, or they want to give you a refund, or they want to give you a free meal. But they can only do that if they have certain information at their disposal. And so one of the things that we try to do, and this is true if you're writing an email, this is true if you're writing a complaint letter, is we want to minimize the back and forth. When I go in and I work with businesses and I talk to employers, one of the things that they tell me is that there's a lot of wasted time and labor and energy in email and other communication platforms. And that's because people don't anticipate what the recipient of the message is going to need to facilitate the action or resolve the problem. And so one of the things I want you to really think about here is if this customer service representative or this business owner or this general manager really wants to help you, what do they need to know before they can help you? And this is very practical information. This isn't scientific. This is what would this person need to process your claim or help you out. So it's probably important for you to provide documentation, so receipts or product numbers, trying to be as specific as possible so that this person doesn't have to email you again and ask for that information. So if you can anticipate the information that a reader will need, and this isn't just true of the complaint letter, it's true in general, if you can just sit down and take a second and sketch out a little profile of your reader, who they are, what they know, what they don't know, what they need to know, it's going to put you in a really good position. So think about the things that they might need. And that seems, pretty obvious again, but it's something that routinely gets omitted from these types of requests. So it's really important that you include that. The other thing that you want to do that keeps the sort of momentum of this request going is you want to make sure that you provide a timeline for resolution. So when do you expect to hear a return? If you don't set that, then you're sort of at the whim of the person receiving the letter. So those are really important things that I want you to consider. And then finally, one of the things that you need to do from the and again, this comes from the position of the reader, is that you need to make sure that you are clearly and effectively articulating why the recipient is culpable for the problem. In other words, if you're going to complain about the longevity of a garment of clothing, like how long it actually lasts or how well it held up, you need to explain what happened, under what conditions, and why you think this is their responsibility. So it's important for you to explain why the reader is at fault. If you don't do that, then for all they know, you may have neglected it or there may have been some other variable at play, and they may not feel like it's their responsibility. So it's important for you to really try, again, and it kind of goes back to the idea of documentation. You want to make sure that the reader really understands why this is something that they need to concern themselves with. So just to recap, If you can format the letter in block letter format and it looks and acts like a business letter, that's good. If you can maintain a professional tone and credibility throughout the letter, where you're not name calling or threatening or denigrating the reader, that's probably good. One of the things that you're going to hear me say a lot in this class is that we have to remember that there are flesh and blood human beings on the other end of letters and emails and other types of writing. It's really easy to think because it's sort of a disembodied practice. I'm going to write something, I'm going to send it, and I'm not going to be there. It can be really easy sometimes, I think, to forget that there's somebody else on the receiving end, and we need to sort of anticipate how our language will be interpreted. And I like to, sort of function under the rule of thumb that if something can be interpreted in a negative way, it probably will be. So if something could be interpreted as being snarky or sarcastic or threatening, there's a good chance that it will be, because one of the limitations of writing is that we're not there to use the inflection of our voice or our mannerisms or our body posture to sort of contextualize the message. And so what the reader is ultimately left with is just the words that are on the page, and so we have to be in constant command of that. So it's really important for us to keep those things in mind. So we have to maintain that professional credibility and tone. We want to make sure that we're giving the reader all of the information that they need to render a decision and to help us out. So we really have to think about the types of things that might help them in facilitating this action, and that's a really important thing to think about, whether you're asking a coworker to help you out with something, or you're asking a business or a company to fulfill some type of request. You just got to make sure that they have all the information that they need, because ultimately, if we're omitting things and we're not really anticipating what they need, it's going to slow down the whole process, and that's not good for anybody, and it can result in wasted time, and we know that wasted time, of course, is wasted money. And of course, we want to just make sure that we're providing that timeline for resolution, because that helps to keep everything on track. So those are some key points, but really the lesson here isn't so much, it is of course that I want you to know how to write an effective complaint letter. That's really important, but the reason I start the semester with this assignment is because it gets us thinking about a number of things. It gets us thinking about a genre or a type of writing and what the parts and pieces are, and we want to make sure that our complaint letter reads and acts and sounds like a complaint letter. But it also gets us really thinking about reader-centered or user or audience-centered design, where we really start all writing tasks by making a careful sketch of our reader and thinking about their task, their goals, their knowledge, and that really helps us address their needs and deliver the message that's most effective. So those are just some things that I want you to keep in mind, and if you've already submitted a complaint letter, you were a real go-getter and you got it in early, that's great. You may want to consider revising based on this little video lecture, and that's completely fine. As you know from taking the syllabus quiz, and I thank you for those of you who have already done that, and I look forward to seeing the responses for those who haven't. One of the unique things about this class is that you have the opportunity to revise and resubmit any piece of writing all semester. So what that effectively means is that writing is never done, it's just due. And I truly believe that, and I think that's an important sort of habit of mind for you to embrace, that a piece of writing can pretty much get better indefinitely. We can continue to improve it and refine it and make it more effective and more concise and more precise and all of those types of things. So and that's something that I'm going to ask you to practice in this class, because while it's easy as writers to fixate on the product of writing, the thing that you're actually doing, what we know from research and what I know from teaching writing for 6 or 7 years is that the product is really the manifestation of a process. You cannot be an effective writer without a strong process, and part of that process is the ability and willingness to get feedback and implement that feedback through revision. So that's something that we'll be doing a lot this semester. So good luck with your complaint letter, and I hope that you have a nice Memorial Day weekend, and I hope that those of you who wish to get this work out of the way so that you can enjoy yourselves on the holiday weekend. As always, if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me by text or by email, and if you need to meet or talk, I'm happy to do so. Thanks.